the cabal,
It's
the
recording now, so
cabal of group chats dictating culture on threads, but it's not real.
no, it's all like a fabric of our connected imaginations, and that's what's really really good about this entire thing is that we all just made this happen somehow, and that's a really wild thought.
This
What,
is
that
my
all
dream
three of us
love
just,
rotation, at least threads version. I'm delighted. What a year-end treat. I'm so happy to see you both.
I mean, I'm happy to just have any communication in English whatsoever. So if I switch into French throughout this, please just remind me because my main language now is French.
Oh my God, when I fucking lived in Japan in 2006, so, this was pre-social media, I was so fucking desperate for English that I watched Full House every single night, which actually is really popular in Japan.
Oh,
Um, I
BRB, I
have
have to do a
Japanese
setting real
subtitles.
quick. BRB.
Okay, sure.
Uh,
But yeah, you
Okay,
speak
he'll be
particular
back.
English.
Yeah, I'm at that point where I'm done with French school and I've been using more French not being in school and not being at work all the time that my brain is sickly, it's fried. I lose my English
Exhausting.
words constantly now. I switch into French and switch into English and it annoys everyone.
Yeah, no, living inside of a second language is absolutely exhausting. And, as a white girl who grew up in the suburbs, more or less, I was grateful to have that experience, if only for a year, because shit.
I mean, I've been here 5 years now, 4 or 5 years, and it took me that long to get into a Franciation program, but now that I'm in it, it's like the difference between being a second class citizen and being a part of the dominant culture is outstanding. It's
uh,
all of a sudden my life has changed because I can conjugate my words enough that people don't just switch right. In the French culture, if you're bad at French, they'll switch right into English. But if you're
Yeah,
good at French, they spend the entire time correcting you. So
sure.
it's this mind meld of trying to figure out what's going on. Does this person hate me or not? And
It's
it's
so stressful. And I mean, I was experiencing it in Japan where the culture is very passive aggressive and polite. So it was just hopeless trying to figure out which faux
I
pas I
got the
was committing
opposite.
at any
I,
given point.
I got nothing but rudeness, nothing but rudeness out of the French.
I love the French. I'm a mega fan of the French, as you know.
You
Um,
can have them.
oh my God.
well, despite my mother being from the only French-speaking part of the entire fucking United States, she has a French name. Her name is Geraldine. She's not French, and she didn't teach me a fucking word of French.
Well, in Maine, so my family, my father's side is from the same area as yours in Maine.
Really, that's
Uh,
amazing. I do not. I mean, those are towns of like 300 people. I never
I
meet
know.
Canadians. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was full-blooded Acadian, and now as I've been going through French school, I constantly have moments where I'm just like, my grandmother was a bitch. Now that I understand the stuff that she was saying to kids, I'm like, I fucking hate that
Oh
lady.
my God,
Christ.
there's such the French, that part of the country is so cunty and it's the French
Oh my
influence. And
God.
honestly, it took me 35 fucking years of life to actually connect those bits of my personality to the fact that this very niche subculture was pressing down on me. I don't know. I could talk about that for hours. That's not what we're here to do. Highway.
Yeah. Is way back?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay,
Hello.
perfect.
Um, yeah, so okay, cool. Everything's recording. We're good. All right. Yeah, I opened up a trial account for this so that we can like talk for however long we want to.
Okay.
Um,
Good. Oh my God, he froze. At least for
Oh,
me.
yeah, he froze for me too.
Way, you're frozen.
um,
We
You're
lost you completely, Wade.
going on here?
Yeah, a little bit. Come on. I told you that's a New England port. I at least put
Um,
lemonade in mine to cover up how strong it was.
lemonade. No, this is expensive whiskey. It actually isn't. It was like an end of year special purchase. It's Writer's Tears.
Okay.
which is an Irish whiskey made in a Japanese cask. And
I know.
it was an expensive bottle. Not a whiskey expert, but it doesn't taste like it.
Have, have you, while we wait for Wei, have you,
Oh yeah, I'm back. Hello?
oh,
Are
you
you guys
are?
good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, so like I said, Zoom's cool, I guess. Um and so Emily, like word I'm guessing you and I both spend our days threading all day, as well as Brett too. We don't really have a job, do we? Like,
I'm quasi-employed. I have income streams. I was actually working, I'm such a fucking girl boss that I wasn't really able to be on the internet for my entire adult life. But I quit corporate America 2 years ago, so mid-pandemic for several reasons. The main one being that my father died, and it was like a year-long process to kind of get my family back on track after that happened. But yeah, I'm slightly employed.
okay. I mean,
But I do have more time than the average person to go down internet rabbit holes and
right.
become an extremely niche influencer on a struggling
Yeah,
app.
yes.
Extremely niche influencer.
Extremely niche,
I
yes.
think 17K on Threads, a niche app to begin with, is I think that's pretty niche.
You're doing much better than the rest of us.
It's been it's been bizarre.
I mean, picking up the trad wife community is still shocking to me, where they just looked at you and went trad wife and never listened or read a single thing that you posted.
It was fucking terrifying. It's essentially the 1 year anniversary of me going, I guess, viral for the first time in my life. I don't even really know what viral means on Threads, but I was so fucking scared because the reason I was private was because I was employed. I'm a professional. I can't have people thinking I'm a trad wife on the internet when I'm employed. But yeah, that's what kickstarted my Threads account.
And
That's
and
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and wait, your job is essential. I'm the only one that's actually employed, but I'm uncancelable because my hands do my job now. I quit the freaking corporate world years and years, 10 years, 15 years ago now. And then
That is
wait,
the
you're
best part of being
yeah, I know.
unemployed
I
is
am in
that you're
corporate,
not
yo. I'm
cancelable.
actually
Like,
like the
what
most
power do you have over me?
yeah,
I
I'm
just assume you command robots and AI to do your job for you, Way.
no, so I code in this language called Visual Basics, which is a really, really old school language. Um, and that's how I'm very much aware that like there's so much talks about like robot apocalypse and the speed at which technology is going. And that was like my mindset before I start working in this industry is like knowing that when you're in the field, you start to realize how concrete so much of the hype in technology is. I work in the financial sector, and so I work with ATM data. So I get ATM data every single night. And if I put in my debit card number into my database, I can actually see all the locations I've been to for the last few years, which is actual power, which is fucking insane. Yeah, exactly.
That
That's
Um,
okay.
so
I'm
scary.
woo,
That's
I need to
so
take a drink after that.
yeah, I am literally
yes. So,
hiding in Canada away from my corporate oligarchs and knowing that they can track me now through my ATM as well scares me.
yes,
We're
ATM.
tracked
So like,
absolutely everywhere. It's insane. And but that way your posts about finance are at least in my memory, I was trying to think of how did I meet Wei? And it was because your posts about investments were so good. We have the same
thank you.
investment
Oh
strategy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
ETF.
him and
finally
Nice,
a
nice,
normal
the
nice.
one thing
person
all three of us have in
investing in
common.
a normal way, and not
Hmm.
like an insane person.
Well,
I
that's the thing is
read
that I came from
when he
that
was getting canceled.
the thing is that I came from that insane background. Like I lost about $7,000 trading options when I first discovered Robinhood. So
Oh
a, lo- a,
no,
lo- a lot of a
it
lot
was
of
a
this shit
fun.
came from insanity, and it came from this heightened idea of what money is, right?
Yeah,
Because I'm also a first generation immigrant. I know nothing about the financial market before 2016, 2017. And 2016, 2017 was a very interesting year that took the US, from a neoliberal state to a much more neoliberal dictatorial state that's
yeah,
controlled by Trump. And so
yeah.
that shift in economic policies was a really shitty way to jump into the financial market
It
because
so
you're just
was. Oh my God, I had a
yeah,
totally different entry because
yeah.
the entire reason that I'm able to be unemployed was because I was a teacher making almost no money, but I was investing at the absolute trough of the
Hmm.
market in 2008. And yeah, even a 5 year difference, you have a totally different relationship with the stock market.
Yeah, even a 5 year like difference, like, and I was taught by Wall Street bets,
Yeah. Oh,
which
oh,
Hold on, I got
yes,
to show
that
you my
makes a
Wall
lot more
Street
sense
bets
so
now.
you
practice.
weren't on the Bogleheads forum.
No, I was on literally Wall Street bets where we see, we see loss posts of people losing their entire inheritance
Million.
on a daily, multiple times a day, and that was a really, and,
Congratulating them.
I
and
was getting my
congratulating them,
financial
yes,
information from the internet before the internet became completely fucked.
And the
right, and
The
Motley
that
Fool.
was
information
a
was
really
better.
interesting, like, cool system to see because that was actually one of the first times that you for me to see what Foucault talks about, which is like the technologies of power and also resistance.
Yeah.
Um, and like I can literally just connect Foucault to everything. That's why his frameworks are so impressive and so powerful. And so I like to take his moniker because it's like every single system, concept, hobby I see, I'm like Foucault, 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 Foucault. You can
Oh,
literally
it's
throw me
everywhere. And well, we should
everywhere.
clarify,
We can
guys,
Yeah,
talk
because
you
about
got to
Disney
no,
movies. We can
clarify
talk
for
about Mulan. We can
I
talk
have
about
to do
Brett
my
potato
teacher
Foster,
thing.
noggin.
stand-up,
Yeah.
your teacher system. That's very, very, very Foucauldian right there. The entire prison school industry. I'm sure you
Yes.
notice how the school structure is very much like a prison where you when you're teaching in the classroom, for example, there's no dialogue. The dialogue is very, very one-sided. The teacher talks to the student rather than a circular formation where everybody can see each other and everyone has a dialogue with each other. The formation of the classroom is forward rather than backwards, unless it's a very open style of communication, which is very antithetical to a lot of public educations, right? So if Emily is a very good teacher, she will restructure her classroom from a one-sided structure so that the students cannot talk to each other. The students do not know what's going behind them, but the teacher, Emily, can see everyone within the classroom from the forward to the backwards. That's a Foucauldian technique called panopticism, which
Why
allows
don't
one person to see multiple angles, like a guard within a prison.
so
Wait,
the
so
average
we need
person is
to
not
wait,
like,
guys,
Yes,
yeah,
gentlemen,
they
go ahead.
don't understand who this guy is. So why don't you do
gentlemen, yes.
your due
Hmm.
We have
diligence
to we
and give
have
the
to sort
potato
of
noggin some ideas about who this guy is?
Yes.
yeah. So, hi, guys. We have to remember that people from Threads are listening to this and they're like, what the fuck are we talking about? Who are these
Yeah.
people? But hi, we're Emily, Bread, and Way. And we are just three fucking idiots who have accounts on
Really, we're just three kids. It's
Uh,
true.
but
I'm
we
gonna venture to guess I'm the biggest idiot out of all of us.
but we came together today in the very depressing last week of the year, strain, where time has no meaning, to discuss among so many, so many other things, I'm sure, but we're talking about influence, social media, um, and then essentially like what happened in 2024 on the internet, on social media, where we all met each other. And one of us is a philosopher, one of us is a high school English teacher, and one of us is a welder in Canada
I'm an idiot. You could
who
just say an
also
idiot.
has, but you also have, I'm guessing, extensive experience in the
Accessibility shortcuts. 20
2000s.
items. Voice guide. Off.
Sorry.
In
Close.
the
Um,
Button.
2000s, sort of comedy and media culture.
so I'll make it as quick as possible. I was a publicist. I was a publicist for fashion companies. That was how I got my start, which I just did a lure drop, and people are like, "Oh my God, you work fashion. You always look like an idiot."
Also,
I'm like, "I
Pornhub
know."
too? What the fuck, Brad?
I've done.
Christ.
And
I
he
can
also knows everything there is to know about women's bras. And
Yeah.
I was fact checking your information because I do actually know more than the average woman about bras. And all of your information was good. Keep going, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, how do I put this? I didn't reach the highest levels of the media landscape, but I
Sure.
controlled a lot more than you guys understand. And there's a reason why I ran away to Vermont where I could carry a gun. And there's a reason why I now live in another country. I know more about, I can call things that are going to happen 5 years in advance. I have a history of doing this. All the things that are going on in pop culture, I left that industry because I saw them going on and I tried to change things within my industry, and the backlash was severe. Uh,
Sure.
but I've been on, I was one of the first Twitter influencers. I had 250,000 followers. I was a stand-up comic because as a publicist, I thought, I'll do it myself. I'll get myself famous, if I'm doing it for other people. So celebrity, the back end of how your media works, all of that stuff is what this uh, idiot savant happens to have a lot of
Well,
experience in.
I think this conversation came out of a post that I made that went pretty wide. I think it has 1.5 likes, 1.5K likes, which is a lot on Threads, but it was about the fakeness of internet culture or internet culture, influencer culture on the
Influencer culture.
internet, influencer culture. And I told a very quick story about how I used to belong to a weightlifting gym and influencers would come in, snap a pic, or in the parking lot, they'd snap a pic of the building and say, like, just did an amazing workout. It's all fake.
Everything is fake.
What is
It,
the effect, and this is where Way comes in, is, what is the effect of all of that fakeness on culture, and where are we headed as we stare down the barrel of a Trump administration?
so can I give a quick, I'll try and keep it short foundation of why we even switched to influencer culture from
Okay.
the marketing and money side, which is really what drives society in America. So I was there at the advent of the popularized influencer and everything. They were just sort of popping up. Instagram hadn't perfected everything. So it was a lot of blogs at this point. And we started off in the fashion industry with a more traditional approach of attacking editors, Cosmo, L, these sort of influential hubs for the niches of where we were trying to get. But towards the end of my career, we started seeing that influencers themselves were easier to track. It was easier to get numbers from. It was easier to be able to gauge your actual influence on what you had them do, because if they have 18,000 readers every month, and all of a sudden after you have them do a blog post on you and you get in within those markets or those niches, all of a sudden you get a 5 or 6% uptick on your sales. Well, you can directly correlate that to an influencer way easier than you can with a magazine that has, I'm going to use some industry terms, things like pass along rates. So when you are targeting L or Cosmo or any of these, they also give you what's called a pass along rate, which is how often Cosmo gets left on a bench and someone picks it up and starts reading, or how often, depending on what page you're at. So people turn to the middle of the magazine more often than anything else. So those spots are more high value for that, and they cost more. So it was more cost effective to go to these influencers that had numbers for you, that were easier to track everything, better to see where your money was going. But the problem was you're putting the power in the hands of the individual there, and their ego started skyrocketing into what you have now. I have plenty of other stories and culture and about all of this stuff, but I'm not going to steal the limelight here. I just want to give people the basics and the beginnings of why and how this started, and it was money. It was money and the ability to track a single person's influence on the market itself.
And that makes complete sense. So I so before this corporate job, I came from SEO content culture. And
SPO is for the
SEO
people and me.
SEO is search engine optimization culture.
Yeah.
So every single blog post you read on a popular blog website that has ads, that has different marketing drives, meaning that there's always a goal for the reader, which is why they have this thing called call to action, CTA.
Always a call to action on
It's
every piece of
always a
marketing material.
Mm-hmm. So I was working at this. I was working at this small startup for about 6 years, where the goal of the startup is to help people create jobs and help people start jobs and help people start their own businesses. Um, which is like, okay, so and that's where like the executives are like, okay, we're gonna help people, and that was the framing, right? We instead of saying, hey, we want to drive profit by getting these people to click on links, um but instead this was the start of kind of like this is also the perfect period where a lot of the startup culture started to accelerate too, during the mid 2020, during the mid um
The
2013 to
2010s.
about
Yeah.
exactly 2010s, where there are so much money coming from Silicon Valley and other funding seed sites that are people are just neoliberals are just pretty much throwing out money into all these places, and we were
Yeah.
able to kind of like question, okay, so they were framing it as a way to help people, which is true. It is a way of framing and helping people, right? And that's kind of
Yeah.
like that's the marketing speak right there in every single company. Let's help people with more information. Let's help them with free information, so that instead of going to Wikipedia or instead of going to different Google sites, looking up state requirements, such as like how do you start a business in Michigan, for example, you have to go through the Michigan's the Secretary of State websites, and you have to go to all these random places. Let's just put all the information in one location. However, and that's the selling point, is that here is free, all the free information. However, it still takes effort. So if you want to skip the effort, click on our affiliate links, click
Yeah.
on our partners, and it was really it was really eye-opening to see how much what is content and what is actual output of insight, and that content
Mm.
to authenticity bifurcation was like my first actual experience with like, okay, the shit I read on the internet are not real.
Yeah.
Everything I read on the internet are not real, because there has been so many layers of extra bureaucracy about
Yep.
it, that requires, okay, the question of who's in control, where is the funding going into, because no one wants to spend their time for free. No
Yeah.
one wants to provide these free documents except for me, even though I also have my own angle, which is to liberate, and I want people to read stuff. And I, I think me and Emily, even Brad, all three of us, we're using our own resources to create this pocket of resistance. The incentive for us is trying to liberate, but who knows, right? If someone offers us $5 million, I'm gonna probably switch sides. But that's not the point. The
So
point being,
here, what you're, let me interrupt for just a second so that I can give the counterpoint and how the person who worked in SEO and all of this stuff and understands how I started to view it. While you see it as a tool and a power, and yes, you have your own angle and everything. Part of the reason why I got out
I
of
did not
the,
hear what you said, by the way.
oh, sorry, can you? Okay. So just real quick, I'm gonna show people the opposite side from what I,
I'm gonna turn on closed caption. That way I can probably see what you're saying. Show
okay.
caption, show caption. Speak again.
So when you have SEO, right? For a lot of people at its beginning, it was, well, I'll throw more money on this so that I'll get more eyes, or I'll do this. And it started off very egalitarian. I don't know if that's the correct word or
Egalitarian.
not. Egalitarian,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, the big
Yeah.
Irish potato noggin here. It started off very welcoming. It was for everyone. Hey, if you have an extra $5, well, then for this week you can get more eyes on your stuff. But then it started monopolies. Then you started having large corporations coming in and dropping huge amounts to the point where it stopped competition. Most of your food comes from the same five major companies and their umbrella brands. Well, when those people start having 2.5, 2.8 million that they're dropping into SEO, and the average guy is still trying to scratch by with his maybe like $2,000 marketing budget, removed the freedom that the internet was at first. You know, while you guys may see this as, oh, it was investments in this, it was pushing people towards this. When I started seeing that, I started seeing that the smaller brands that I wanted to work with, I worked with major fashion brands, but they were all evil. So when I tried to diversify and work with sort of smaller upstarts and everything, I found that without these massive budgets, all of a sudden the internet was becoming a monopoly. And unless you were willing to work with Google, you know, it started off with Google of just like, hey, we're happy to finally making money. And then Google all of a sudden had things to say about what you were trying to promote. And so it became sort of putting yourself on bended knee to Google saying, we want this format because we see this format as effective, as opposed to what your market research and everything your company is doing and seeing what works with their fans. So I don't know if it's Foucaultian or not, but you started to see a severe power imbalance between major corporations, major money, and the smaller guys who were up and coming, who are the actual guys who drive the market. People don't understand in a lot of stuff with fashion. It's not necessarily the major brands that are driving all of the money. A lot of the smaller upstarts that people are looking for are the ones making the investments into new engineering, into new products and everything. And that's actually kept down because of all of the money into search engine optimization.
Google
So
is essentially, I mean, I feel like Google is so much more useless than it was 20 years
Yeah,
ago. It is
I
so
I
incredibly
switched.
difficult to find unvarnished information about any niche topic. There is this concept, if we're going to talk about fashion, which you all know is like one of my major interests, there's this idea of the otaku, which is a Japanese word meaning roughly translating to big nerd.
Mhm.
But like, say you wanted the very best information about the very best leather shoes, there are otaku groups online that are discussing, you know, truly simply because of their passion for the topic, because they're interested in some kind of mastery over this subject. They're not being motivated by profit. They're not influencers, right? They're just
Mhm.
hobbyists. And that was the internet that I grew up with, and that, you know, because I'm 41 years old, I'm an elder millennial. I've watched the internet be born. It used to be a place where just enthusiasts could share knowledge, and now it has become corrupted by profit. And you have influencers who are, everything they do is a commercial, and everything feels like a scam. Everything feels really low quality and dubious. And because because search engine optimization has perverse incentives, you can't even fact check anything that they say anymore. And, you
Can
know,
we just make a
that's
slight change
where
to
we
your
are.
wording? You keep
Mhm.
saying feels. Feels is incorrect. Is. Everything is cheap and dubious now. Everything is a scam now. It's not that it feels that way. It's that we live in a society on the internet now that encourages these scams, that encourages you to monetize all of this stuff. So while you're saying it
Yeah.
feels like, I want to add a little bit more solidarity to it in that you're right. It is a scam now. It's not just that it feels that way.
And I'm so interested in why everything in influence feels like a scam and why the internet feels like one big scam. And I have theories about that if we want to start getting philosophical way.
so
Well,
I oh go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say I can touch on some of the functionality of that and how it's come about, and a lot of it is bottom line. But I don't want to dominate the conversation in any means. So continue on, way.
Yeah.
So I can actually give you guys a direct example from the power of SEOs. So on the website, on the company that I used to work for, we have this thing called okay, so on the topic of search engine optimization, let me share with you. Oh, me as a host cannot share things. Well, that's stupid. Anyways, so there's this web. So I was actually going to pull up this website called Ahref, which are um Word, which is a dashboard that allows you to keep track of keywords and keywords and different rankings of keywords across multiple websites. So, for example, if you my website is simplephilosopher.com. If I want to actually put an effort and kind of spread my wings within that content SEO channel, I can use this website called Ahref. And this is not sponsored, by the way. I've been working with this shit for a long ass time. Where you can see, let's say that I want to open up a business in Michigan, and I want to open up I want to write a blog about this post in Michigan. I have to organize my content in a way that Google sees it, and in a way that Google actually pushes your content up. And Google never technically gives any of us this algorithm, and this is before this thread algorithm. This is before. This is why Google is so popular and powerful. It's like Google literally controls the narrative of truth. Google has this power of truth. They still do, but right now the narrative is slightly shifting towards much more community-oriented truth, which is what Emily was talking about, and how these otakus who gives out these lived experiences as truth came from a genuine place of authenticity and hobby, and they care. And that's why ChatGPT takes in Reddit data. It's not because Reddit is valuable. The Reddit is valuable because it has humans producing actual content. Before this idea of the dead internet theory, which is that all content is generated. But for the last 20 years, since 2006, Reddit has been a community, an open source community of dialogue and interrogation. And there's always this like trend of monopolization where when a Reddit group becomes too powerful and too strong, content becomes trash. Because that's when moderations actually come in, and that's when there are these much more market-driven purposes behind a lot of the Reddit communities. But the power of Reddit community was that otaku nature, or was that nerdy nature. It was that niche nature where TikTok now is kind of like trying to bifurcate from that level of turning and neoliberalizing, converting from hobby and funsies to marketable driven forces. So back to the concept of SEO optimization. When you're writing an article, you're constantly using websites like Ahrefs and similar websites like Google Keyword Analytics to see how your keywords within the article matches up to the other trends. What are other websites in that similar ranking system doing in their articles? And let's see if we can pick out what they're using, and let's see if we can copy some of those ideas. And so you have this normalization, or converting from unique articles that has actual spins to a much more side rail guarded article.
Homogenized
article, homogenized, normalized, kind of neoliberalized article that turns into a content to be packaged and sold. So when I had this realization when I was reading Ryan Holiday's book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, in which he pretty much validated I don't know if you read this book or read it or not, but Ryan Holiday is a huge podcaster, a huge Stoic person, and some of his works are great because it gives you this direct truth of what the fuck is going on within culture. I read this book in like 2018 when I was working at this SEO content company, and I was just like, holy shit, I've been a driving figure in this discourse, or this idea, or this like general cultural narrative, or the vibe of truth production. Yes, but it's a word that people can understand when I say discourse.
I know.
Discourse is a complicated term, but this cultural feeling of like, holy shit, I forgot what I was saying. The vibe of this article, it hits on multiple points because there's a connectedness in which you feel like you've seen the same memes as I do, and that's why I think memes are such a powerful signifier or a symbol or a thing in which everyone sees, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I get that point. I get that point, and that's one of my techniques is that I use a fuck ton of memes within high discourse, which is what academics would be like considered, to be like fancy pinky up reading versus low discourse, which is like the average whatever reading that people think it's to be low or uncultured, but there is no distinction between high and low discourse. There is just words and being produced. Go ahead, Red.
Well, yeah, there's no distinction between high and low discourse anymore because we've become very intolerant of, I would say, of high discourse because we're all obsessed with equality, right? And I have so much to say about this idea of influencing and this idea that so much of the internet is a scam, so much of influencer content is a scam, and
It's all a scam.
it's all a scam. It's all a scam. However, in some ways, the influencer economy and the digital economy has democratized so many luxuries that were previously only available to a privileged few. And some of those are like fast fashion, right? Like you can have these extensive wardrobes. You can have your consumer goods delivered super quickly. Uber gave us private car service. Apps give us like meal delivery. You can hire a servant to go fetch your food for you. But influencing itself has also democratized fame. Like now, anybody who gets on the internet and starts yapping can grow an audience. And there are these theories that when you start raising the standard of living for too many people, there's going to be a really aggressive backlash to that because you cannot raise the standard of living for the masses to a point it becomes unsustainable. You all die
So
as a result. We drown
That is
made of our own garbage.
that is what we called in the early 2000s aspirational branding, where we
Yeah.
would purposely show people that we thought, hey, this looks like an everyman. Let's give him a Hermes bag. So that
Yeah.
the every person then their goal became that Hermes bag. Their goal stopped being, oh, I want to make money, I want to invest it, I want to get out of this cycle. You purposely created what's called aspirational branding, which was people would aspire to a lifestyle that they could never actually reach, but they could get tastes of it now. Like
Yes.
Hermes puts out a belt, they'll never afford the bag, but
You
now
can
they can
get
get a belt.
coffee at the Louis Vuitton cafe. Like you can't
Yep.
buy a Louis
And
Vuitton bag, but you can visit the
and you can
store
take
and they buy
pictures
the
of that
coffee.
and
Yeah.
you can take pictures of
but
that and fake it and make it seem like that's part of your lifestyle is going in and getting coffee there. But realistically, once you have that cup, you can wash that cup out a million times. It's got your name on it. It doesn't. I don't know. But you can reuse that cup in a million other pictures now that you have it.
Yes.
so so Emily and Brett both brought up one really good point, which is that there has been this democratization going on, right? So
Mhm.
this is where kind of like this is where so on Threads there is this really awesome philosopher and brother that I follow, a smiling Sisyphus, um brilliant thinker, um always be posting up academic shit that I have to even Google, and I have to even take out a fucking dictionary because
I
for
got no
fuck
chance then.
like I have to actually like, oh, I have to look up this word called prelapsarian, which is this word that means before the fall of men.
Yes.
Exactly, it's a conceptual concept, and I was just like, okay. So one of the biggest contentions that I have with smiling Sisyphus as a Foucauldian is that Foucault has this idea of that power is so overwhelming that you cannot escape it, and that
Oh,
is
it's
where
everywhere. Power is
it's
everywhere.
power is everywhere. You cannot escape it. However, where there's also resistance, meaning that even though there's a shift from mainstream power to influencer power, the shifting process also creates new luxuries, such as the democratization of luxuries, such as that more people have Uber power, more people Uber as in like the ride service culture, more people have choices to do more fast fashion, which is also problematic. However, they get more choices. This shift going from a hierarchical up and down power, which is like for, in the past, brands has to call managers, like what Brett was talking about, how they have to call content, they have to call your manager for these media companies to produce an article, whereas now there's this direct connection between the company that wants to advertise and the SE and the influencer. So there, that shifting right there is kind of it is a power dynamic shift that
Okay,
goes
so
from
let
that.
me
Oh,
explain this process to you guys before we move forward of how we actually did it, how we turned someone from an otaku, which you guys, that's your term, into an influencer, right? Because every
mhm,
influencer started off as an otaku.
That's
We
exactly
don't,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
we
mhm,
don't want to target someone that doesn't already have some sort of audience. Then we are creating everything and it's really expensive. But if we find that otaku who's driving the sales of 17,000 people, we'll just take Emily's number for example, and we see this person and we go, what's his price? Because
mhm,
every single human being, this is your power dynamic, has a price. Because this person aspires to get these objects, to get,
mhm.
let's say that they're an otaku for pretty ballerinas. It's an Italian ballet flats company, okay? All
Tech
right, and let's
products.
I
say
prefer Repetto, but that's all right.
okay. All right. Well, listen, I worked with pretty ballerinas for years, so I'm going to
Okay.
use them because I know it. Okay. So, you want these products, right? That's your goal is so we start off. It's boiling frog syndrome. It's like, well, hey man, we see that you have a lot of people listening to you. Would you like to be the first one to try out these shoes? Would you be the first one to see these, perhaps? Uh, and with that, you've already got a taste for this of, oh my God,
Mhm,
well, I am the influencer. This company values my opinion. They want to give me this product. And then so that's how it starts at first because we have leverage over you. We have the
mhm,
money, we have the budget. You at a certain point are not making millions of dollars. You're looking to get to that point. And essentially we want to radicalize you. That's really a lot of the steps that we take is the same as terrorists take in
As in
radicalizing people.
radicalize, as in like force you to monetize your hobby, like every
Force you to
millennial is
monetize
told
your
to do.
hobby,
Monetize
force
that hobby.
force you not only to monetize your hobby, but now we monetize your life.
Oh,
mhm,
for
And
sure.
you
Yeah.
have to keep up these presentations now because there's such a thirst for content. So now you, no matter how much money you're making, cannot keep up with the amount of content you have to create to keep your own income stream going. So it's a means of creating a modern day corporate brand slave. So now you have a guy that went from maybe 17,000. Now with our money, our backing, our products and everything, people start to think he's special. Okay, well now this guy's making $80,000 a year and he thinks he has big britches. So what we'll do is when he starts pushing back too much, well, let's take all these products away from you. We don't like your
mhm,
opinion anymore. We don't like what you're doing. We're not going to give you the things that you need, and we're going to show you that we're your lifeline now. We're the ones in control of you, and without us, you're not going to be able to play ball the way that you want to play ball. So
Yeah.
now we have essentially a puppet. We've taken
Yeah.
a guy who was an otaku, we've given him everything that he wanted for a short period of time. We've changed the leverage, we've taken back what we used to give him, and now everything we give him gets returned.
And that is
mhm,
the tragedy of young people in particular aspiring to influence as a job. And I understand why they turn to it because the rest of the job market
It
fucking
looks good.
sucks as well.
Yeah.
I understand, but it's a question of degrees. And when you sign up to be an influencer when you're young and you have no other skills to fall back on and you're putting your eggs into this basket, you're doing this risk reward thing in your head. And I've also talked on threads about how nobody teaches you how to be an influencer and how to navigate these power dynamics.
Don't trust anyone that tries to teach you how to do it. I
Yes.
taught people how to do it, and guess what? It worked out great for every
Yes, but
company
like
that I
you're
worked with,
still
and
an
terrible for them.
employee. Yeah,
Yeah.
like when you sign up to influence and you start, those are my dogs, you start shaping your life around this stream of income and become more and more
Mhm,
dependent on it and also become more and more emotionally dependent on the positive feedback and the fame that you get from influencing.
mhm.
Um, you're gonna get fucked. I mean, that's you're just going to get fucked because you're going to age out of your demographic. As you
Yep.
said, the brands are going to stop working with you if you commit any kind of faux pas. Everything you do is tracked and surveilled, and also you're at the mercy of platforms who, with the flick of a switch or a new line of code,
Can turn you off.
can turn you completely off and shut you the fuck up. It is multi-level marketing schemes run on Facebook all
Mhm.
over again.
Yep.